Welcome to the AZ Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Hamid Chojai, a tech enthusiast and entrepreneur. Recently, my wife and I sold our software companies and we're investing $10 million in Arizona's tech ecosystem. As a way to know what's happening in Arizona, every week I get to sit down with some exceptionally talented people who are doing some cool shit. All right, let's go. All right. I'm here with Howard Lindzon. Am I saying your name right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Who is a legendary investor for Arizona anyway? I mean, I'm just, not to put a caveat on it, but he's also a general partner in Social Leverage, co-founder of StockTwits, seed investor in Robinhood, and many other successful companies. And he lives right here in Arizona.
Yes.
Hey, Howard, how are you?
Good to be here.
Love it. I'm glad you could make it.
Great. This is the nicest studio I've been in Phoenix.
Yeah, in specifically North Scottsdale, this little 85260.
No, in Phoenix. So I have a podcast, and my studio is not this nice.
No, this is awesome. There's so many things we need to talk about, but where do you want to start? You want to start on some of the...
You go, and if I'm getting way too off topic, you'll just stop me.
Well, let's start with Robinhood, since that's been on the news lately. You were an early seed investor in Robinhood. How did that come about? And
the long story is I love investing.
Yeah.
I got the bug, lost my first trade, like no one's first trade anymore is a loss. The market only goes up, stonks, Wall Street bets, But when I was a kid, we had to walk through 6 miles of snow knee deep to buy a stock.
Uphill, both ways.
Uphill, both ways to buy a stock.
Right.
And you had to be nice to the stockbroker. No, I mean, it's a freedom thing.
Right.
So when I was a kid in Toronto, there was no freedom. It was...
That communist
there was no
Canada.
tasers, no guns, just donuts, and we were just happy the Americans hadn't invaded. So what a freedom it was to have a cold call from a stockbroker. I don't know, I guess I was 18 or of legal age to buy a stock.
Okay.
And I remember where I was like on a putting green at my family's, we were members of a country club. So I guess that's what happens. You get calls from a stockbroker when you're 18. And I bought my first stock, clearly Canadian. It was a soda company. And it went, I knew the company. I drank their product, so I bought the stock, and it was a Vancouver Stock Exchange, and it promptly went to zero. And so that was my first lesson in the stock market.
That's rare for a stock to go to zero, right?
Well, it's rare in an era of software.
Okay.
It's not rare. So I think the math is, I'm a classic trend follower, and I've studied all the math, but 70% of all stocks go to zero.
Really?
At some point in their life.
Okay. I guess
the S&P is replaced all the time now because of technology.
Right.
Technology is just doing its thing.
Right.
But now it's doing it faster and faster. See how off topic we already are? You asked one question.
No, it's perfect. This is exactly on topic.
Talking about clearly Canadian beverage. So anyways, if we look at Coinbase, I just wrote about today, Coinbase IPO. Is that the beginning of crypto or the end or somewhere in between? Most likely it's the beginning, even though we could argue that Coinbase is massively overvalued and may not be around, but there's certain iconic moments. I think tomorrow goes a direct listing.
Okay.
And they're saying at least $100 billion. So we'll see. But that's the first crypto native IPO. So this is...
But they're making real money. They're not making crypto money.
They're making shebang money. They're making...
On every single crypto transaction, which is
literally
unbelievable.
Ripping people off. People are dying to be ripped off to get access to crypto. Bloomberg today put out Bloomberg, the actual media company, I think I just heard a $400,000 price target on Bitcoin.
Really?
Yeah. So when I invested in Robinhood, Bitcoin wasn't a thing. It was 2013, and I just had this view way back from trading at E-Trade and losing my money when I was 18 and making money over the years as a trader and a hedge fund manager. I got into the business, yada, 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 and I started StockTwits. And I was too non-operational or not motivated to start a brokerage firm.
Okay.
So in 1999, you had Daytech, E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, Schwab, just a boom because of the internet and e-brokerage, online brokerage, click, tap, buy.
Right.
$9.99 or whatever it was at the time. And then nothing. The crash happens in 2001, and what came out of that crash was, you're stupid, nobody should buy stocks.
Right.
And what came out of that crash was the S&P 500 and Vanguard, and set and forget, and don't pay fees, don't pick stocks. If the index is better than you, which is a lot of truth to that.
Right.
But then comes the smartphone, so you got 8 years of nothing,
Right.
from 2000 the crash and then Jobs gets the smartphone out, and Twitter becomes the thing, because Twitter was started before the iPhone.
Yeah.
Twitter was a
2007.
BlackBerry thing.
Yeah.
And then the smartphone comes out, and everybody's like, what? I'm not going to switch from my BlackBerry. That's not that long
Doesn't
ago.
have a keyboard. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I remember these conversations. It's
We're
just,
old.
yeah.
You're going to pry this BlackBerry from my cold, dead hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are literally things I wrote.
Yeah.
And here we are.
So you were the guy I was arguing with.
You believed in the iPhone?
I mean,
I was like, I'm literally, who's the worst guy in tech? Maybe Steve Ballmer? I'm like worse than Steve Ballmer. So
Yeah,
I was like the Steve
he
Ballmer
called it
guy.
a joke or whatever. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So hopefully I'll own an NBA team. I'm as bad as him. But anyways.
If we could all be as bad as Steve Ballmer.
But you know what I mean? Like, he was opposite. He did the opposite for Microsoft. Those were like the decades of stock going nowhere. Because it wasn't even like you had to be right. He wasn't right ever.
Ever, yeah.
And so that's kind of
He
me
took the
in
momentum,
tech.
basically.
Yeah, he rode what they had built in the
Yeah.
And we can all run a cash flow positive business. Anybody can do it.
When it's as profitable as Microsoft is.
With
it's
those
just-
margins, anybody can run a business. Trust me.
With a 95%
I will hand
market
off
share.
my enterprise to my kids if I have those type of gross margins.
Yeah.
So we went through nothing. Then the smartphone comes out. Then Twitter takes off, and I started StockTwits, which was Twitter for finance. And I'm like, why is nobody trading from their phone? That was just me talking to myself for like all those years. And I would go around to E-Trade, and I go, why don't you guys put a brokerage inside Twitter, go cut a deal on it? So I started StockTwits and the dollar sign, and the idea was, Fred Wilson, who's the major first investor, who was a friend of mine. I used to send him BlackBerry tweets with the dollar sign, and he was like, genius, you should start StockTwits. And so I did, and I went to Jack and Ev, and I'm like, guys, there's a hashtag, let's do let's tie it into a brokerage, and one day the president will tweet that,
Dollar sign, whatever.
Yeah, like the market this, or Mark Andreessen or somebody famous will tweet, I'm buying Apple.
Right.
And everybody should be able to buy Apple from that tweet. That's the protocol.
Right.
The click. And basically Jack and Ev were like, no, you just use our API. Or they're not finance. They went into that. They were more artsy. And so I had to build StockTwits. And I didn't want to build a brokerage because building a brokerage didn't seem like a good business.
Okay.
So there was no innovation in the brokerage business, no innovation in the clearing business. It was just a monopoly or oligopoly of Schwab, the banks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they could charge whatever they want. And at the time, Schwab was considered discount at $9. But that last $9 was staying.
Yeah.
And with that $9, Schwab, E-Trade, Ameritrade spent hundreds of millions of dollars building product teams to really support an ad budget that would go towards a customer acquisition cost. That was just a known thing, and no one wanted to disrupt that last mile of trading.
Right.
Many had tried on the desktop, Zecco and a few other things. Skype guy backed one. I mean, if the Skype guy, whatever his name is, can't make money in brokerage with Zecco, people were scared. Like, these are the best technology people in the world. But the smartphone changed all that. So I think the smartphone and social network was what was the final push. And so in 2010, I'm in Israel and getting pitched on deals, and eToro, which is pre-Robinhood, gets on stage, Yoni Assia, and he shows his product called eToro, which was a brokerage, FX and stocks, and it was just on a mobile phone, and I'm like, that's the future.
Yeah.
So we invested, we put together, I didn't have a fund at the time. We were in Phoenix, Tom and I, and so I came home from Israel. I'm like, we got to fucking back up the truck. This is the future. And we put together a local single-purpose vehicle, raised a couple $1 million, and I just went around trying to raise money for this SPV. And at the time, I was like, I knew Mark Pincus. He had been an investor in StockTwits or in my last company, Wall Strip. And I was like, this is Zynga for men. Yeah. Zynga at the time was like Farmville and like whatever.
Right.
middle-aged women, 30-year-old women playing.
Game company. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was a lot of women playing.
Right.
So I called it Zynga for Men. It's like, this is what gaming is. Like the stock market is a game. And they struggled to raise money, but then Spark came in. And flash forward today, it's a $14 billion.
This is eToro.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a 14-year overnight success. They just SPAC'd. Stock's trading strong at $14. It's $14 billion. They have 2 in the bank.
Okay.
140 countries.
Wow.
Robinhood way before Robinhood.
Okay.
And Yoni was the first person sitting this close when I was talking about eToro that uttered the word Bitcoin to me in 2010.
Okay.
And
you
I
immediately
remember,
put all your money in it, right?
No, I immediately went to Twitter and go,
what the hell is
idiot.
Bitcoin?
and you can go look at some tweets that I've put on my blog. Yeah. Twitter is real time.
Yeah.
The world.
And it saves everything.
And yes, unless you delete. And so, and I think it's a mistake that they've ever let anybody delete anything, which StockTwits doesn't allow people to do, especially if you're talking about finance, and we can get into the nuance. But he uttered the word Bitcoin to me, and I said, listen, Yoni. He's like 28 or 29. I said, I'm here to invest in eToro. Don't mix things up for me.
Right.
If I had only put that money in Bitcoin. So it was at 12 cents. So I went to Twitter and I'm like, getting pitched Bitcoin, LOL. I'm sure whatever I said was stupid. And
but it was actually smart because like it didn't, like it was just being created out of thin air. So why is thin air worth 12 cents, right? Like
that's what it was worth. It was a dark web thing.
No, but that was your point, is that it's not even worth 12 cents, right? Because
I didn't know what I was just like, where do you buy? I'm sure I asked him, where do you buy it?
Okay.
And he would have pointed me to Mt. Gox. So the only solace of not putting money in Bitcoin in 2010 is I wouldn't have been smart enough to take it out of Mt. Gox.
Right.
And I would have lost all my money, which would have been tens of millions of dollars. I had a mansion at the time.
Right.
And I probably would be in an insane asylum. I'd probably be in an insane asylum.
Right.
Now it's just a good story of me being an idiot. The other story would have been tragic because my wife would have left me, my dog wouldn't have talked to me, and my kids would have said, "You're the idiot that lost your money at Mt. Gox."
You would have been a country singer.
Yeah. So this is there's lessons in here. Yoni is a great guy. He's the center of. And this is a very American thing. Americans think everything happens in America, right? And then it's easy to get mad at China because they do copy everything.
Right.
But there's innovation everywhere, and COVID is showing that. Yoni was a military kid who loved trading and FX, and they didn't have access to U.S. markets. And he saw the smartphone, and he's built an incredible non-American company that's worth $14 billion.
That's amazing.
And so Robinhood gets all the press, and I'm very proud of it. But I had seen the future
with
eToro.
And then
so Robinhood was easy.
Yeah.
Because when they pitched me, they had called me. They were out of money. They were trying all kinds of different things before the brokerage. It was called Kronos Research. And because of StockTwits, everybody kind of knew me.
Okay.
And I'm the easiest way to get users because if you have a product that needs stock market people.
Yeah.
So we're like Twitter for finance. So if you need your first 10,000 users, call Howard. If he likes your product, he'll give you an upvote on StockTwits, let's say, or a thumbs up, and you get users.
Right.
And they're very related to the product that
because they're all people who are interested in stocks.
Yes. So they weren't stupid. They called me, and I went and got the pitch, and we were at, I don't remember much, but both of them were wearing Google Glass. This is 2013, and I'm like, oh, God, I don't like them already. And you remember, because Google Glass, of all things that have failed.
Stupidest looking things.
Well, there was Google Wave, Google Glass, all the Google biggest ideas.
Right.
Good lesson are huge blockbusters, or huge failures. And there was a moment in time, I think it was on Fortune, that Mark Andreessen and Horowitz are on the cover of Fortune wearing Google Glass. And there were funds being created to just invest in Google Glass ecosystem before they launched Google Glass.
Right.
And so, there was a bunch of people running around Silicon Valley with Google Glass, and they looked dumb from day one.
Right. Right. They didn't even try to make that product look decent. It's that was their biggest
So they
problem.
showed up in that, and I was a little worried.
Yeah.
But then they showed me the product, and the product was
Solid.
just beautiful from day one. What they didn't have was the licensing yet, and so they were looking for money to take this product to the market. Out. Yeah. And I said, if you build this, our users will come. So we invested $100,000 only.
Okay.
And it was at 10 million post money. It was a note.
Wow.
And then we put a little more, and then we did piece of the Series A, and it's one of those companies, much like LifeLock here locally.
Yeah.
The original, like, moment I saw the product or met the founders, I was in.
Yeah.
And that's worked out. Of course, there's headaches along the way, LifeLock too, locally. But Todd David, like, the minute I saw the idea,
Right.
I was like, this is $1 billion. And it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
So when you do it, you have to go in.
Yeah.
Like
That's awesome.
And that's still the way investing is, I think, today, is we all do our job and we're looking for companies, but only a few times in your life do you come across people and go, it's hard to fuck it up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right place, right time, right founder.
Are you still in Robinhood, or
Yeah.
did you guys cash that out along the way?
We have a rule, social leverage will sell if the founders are selling.
Okay.
You know, some of my mentors, like Brad Feld and Fred Wilson,
Yeah.
you talk to them and you can't, I sell on the way up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in hindsight, we've sold a lot of things early, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
But you
conservative
still
by
have a
nature.
significant portion of it in.
I have enough to be nervous.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm on
Like,
paper. I could be rich soon.
if they go public.
Yeah.
Which they'll probably do what, like over 20,
I'm hearing
20 billion
I'm
or
hearing
30 billion?
30-ish billion.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to contain my enthusiasm. So I have a combination of, eToro and Robinhood this year.
That's awesome.
Which is
Congratulations
thanks,
on that.
thanks. So it's very exciting. There's so many lessons that there's a lot more confidence.
Yeah.
Not so much confidence, but it's the kind of quieter confidence that you get from, like, all right, it's a thing that we're supposed to do as investors.
Yeah.
You gotta make money for your LPs, so it's our job.
Right.
But nobody, like, when I walked out and called Tom, he was in Phoenix. I called him and I said, dude, don't need to do just send $100K before they change their mind. There's, and
awesome.
Tom does that and he listens. But, like, we have a great, investing partnership. He knows when I have that feeling.
Did he already have social leverage, or
We had set it up. This
Okay.
was in our first fund. It was
Okay.
maybe our second or third investment that it was coming along.
Gotcha.
2013. And so it's just fun to have been there, at the plate and recognize,
early stage of
recognize the fastball, the sitting fastball, and at the time, it still gets kind of laughed at, like, because, the Vanguard people and people shouldn't do this themselves, and they're ripping people off, and
What?
the America way of hating things.
Oh my God, that is
how we go through.
you're
seeing it happen.
I want to talk about that
You're
a little
seeing
bit.
it
but-
happen. The
but-
villainization of companies.
Robinhood, yeah.
Well, just corporate America.
Yeah, that's true.
For good
And-
reason, but, like, it's hard
Some
as
of
a
it is for
seed
good
investor
Yeah.
to take responsibility for all this. Like, how do you? We were there when it was just 4 people,
Right.
and they were just regular, struggling Stanford smart kids. Well, not right, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's who they are. They're Stanford smart kids. I don't know. It's not their fault.
Yeah.
That
I want to actually talk about that and the villainification of it as well. But, like, before we do, I want to, because you touched on stock twits, but we didn't really talk about so what was that? Like, it's Twitter for stocks, but
yeah. So
like,
so I had lost money as and I had success as an entrepreneur. Went to school at ASU and then Thunderbird here in town, and as a stockbroker myself. And then I went into entrepreneurship through a cold call, yada yada yada, and I'm started a hedge fund because the '90s were like a bull market. Like, you could buy any. It was tech stocks were just starting. Intel 286, Intel 386, like
Right.
Palm Pilot, Egghead Software. I mean, it was just the beginning, right? And Netscape IPO in '98. Netscape, like Coinbase, is kind of like to crypto and decentralization what Netscape was to
the
internet
yeah.
browsing, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to, like, people like to be mad, but, like, the technology's speeding up.
yeah,
Like, the last great IPO before Netscape was probably Microsoft, because Amazon was just a book
maybe
thing.
Dell
But that wasn't, because that was just a copycat.
of IBM,
Of Apple
yeah.
and
Or-
IBM.
yeah, okay.
So, they weren't the moments. Like, Microsoft was like consumer internet.
right.
Netscape was like, Microsoft was software.
Consumer software, yeah, and
Netscape
business software, really,
and business,
But, yeah.
but we wouldn't even count that as a category, even though that was their business. And because you could throw Salesforce maybe in, or before that Legato, or Oracle. But I think it was like Microsoft, Netscape,
Yeah.
obviously Facebook, maybe Twitter, but Facebook, and then you had Uber,
Right.
like in the sharing economy, and now you have Coinbase. And the gaps between these massive wave changes are shrinking because of the smartphone and because of the internet, because of all the bubbles that we've had before.
Right.
So it's just hard. It's fascinating. And we're doing it all like you and I in Phoenix.
Yeah.
You can do it from anywhere in the world.
That's what I love about technology and investing in general. But yeah, I mean, so at some point what was StockTwits though?
Yeah.
Like it's
Sorry,
like,
I got off.
Yeah, no, that's okay, because like I want to talk about a lot of these subjects, but
So the key thing to me was domain experience.
okay.
I 18 years old, lose money in the stock. Still stayed fascinated with the markets. Probably stopped doing it for years, going to college. I didn't have money. And because I lived in Phoenix and couldn't get a job, it was 90, 91, so it was like the sales and what was it called, the banking crisis, and then you had the thrift crisis here.
Right.
What's his name?
You're talking about the capital.
Well, it was 91. It was a nightmare. And then the Gulf War. And so there were no jobs. And I'm graduating from Thunderbird with all these degrees. And I'm a Canadian, so I don't have a green card. So I was just like, take whatever job I could get. And I became a stockbroker.
Okay.
Just to stay in the country.
Right.
And to apply for a green card because I wasn't married. So I just got reacquainted with stocks. And I had a good mentor, and he was teaching me about the market. And I was doing cold calls. Back then, there was no internet. You got on the phone, and you got a list of cards, and you were just like, hello, is Betty there? And I was pretty good at it, even though it was a terrible job. And I just was fascinated with the markets, finally. And you flash forward, the internet happens.
Twitter
trading
happens.
Yeah, well, first the internet, but then YouTube happens.
Okay.
2005-ish. And I was running my hedge fund, trading, and trying to make a living. And YouTube comes out, and I'm like, oh, my God. It was all cat videos.
Right.
And it was like videos that the media companies would try and get taken down. So YouTube was basically cat videos.
And copyrighted
and
stuff.
copyrighted stuff. That was YouTube. And I was a disgruntled CNBC. Like, I didn't have access to Bloomberg. I didn't have the money.
Right.
And CNBC just made no sense to me. So in that era, you were just like 2005, there was no innovation in finance, right? You had the crash in 2001, the internet crash. So you had all this, like, and nothing. And so you had to watch CNBC for your news, and I was just like, what? And so I had the idea to put CNBC on YouTube while I was here in Phoenix, and I cold called Fred Wilson. I said, why don't we build a business channel on YouTube?
Okay.
And I pitched it to him, and he was like, this is like a cold call to one of the best investors in the world. He's like, love that idea. And so he invested, introduced me to a bunch of great investors, and I raised $600,000 over my Nokia cell phone maybe in 2005, 2006, and started this show on the internet called Wall Strip.
Okay.
And CBS acquired it 6 months later. So it became the first show ever, first
like
online
finance show.
First show of any kind acquired by a major network.
Wow.
From YouTube. And so that was my original claim to fame.
Gotcha.
And then Twitter came out.
So you
I'm
already
working
had
for
a following.
CBS.
Okay.
Yeah, I already had a following.
Yeah.
Built from scratch on all the video channels. And then Twitter takes off. And I was inside CBS, like doing nothing. It was like Clarence Peaks at CBS. And Twitter's come along, and I'm like, this is really the future of finance and trading, because all these messages flying around, and you're sending it on BlackBerries. And so I went to Fred, and I'm like, what do you think of this idea? And he's like, yeah, you should do that. And so I quit CBS to start StockTwits.
Okay.
And flash forward 13 years.
But, okay, so what? Just real briefly, what is StockTwits?
StockTwits that's part of the problem of StockTwits is people still ask me what it is, and that's not your fault, that's my fault. But StockTwits is just a Twitter-like platform, an open protocol that allows people to talk about stocks in 140 characters.
But it has its own users.
We were built on top of the Twitter API.
Okay.
Because that's how things were done.
Okay.
But then that whole fiasco with Twitter closing their API, I was ahead of that curve, believing that Twitter would do that to companies. So we built StockTwits on Ruby the same way Twitter did.
Gotcha.
And it's a separate platform.
Gotcha.
So you have to open a StockTwits account. And you can send messages to Twitter.
Okay.
But you can't
go the other direction.
Right.
Gotcha.
That was all the work that we did.
So
we had to deal with all this shit during the Twitter years.
StockTwits had its own user base.
Correct.
How many people?
Today there's over 5 million.
Okay. But
At
you
the
sold
time, it was
at
like
some
we were
point.
fighting. No. I'm still chairman and.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
it was a profitable business, growing really fast.
Okay.
But small company, owned less than 30 employees.
Even today?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
With
very
5
cool.
million users?
Yeah.
Based out of Arizona?
It's no longer. It's New York.
Okay.
But I'm here,
Okay.
and my
Is
son's
it
here.
remote mostly, or like
Now it's
is
remote.
most of the office in New York?
It was, and now everybody's remote.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought you didn't own it anymore. Like at some point you had sold it, but
No.
so it still has a lot of influence then.
It's probably the large, other than Wall Street Bets, but we're different. I
Right.
would say the most unique data set of traders in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
I'm really proud of that.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, if you had told me when I started StockTwits that if it would still be around by 2010, I would say, no, someone's going to buy this.
Right,
It was
right.
built to sell. So, it was like a classic blunder
Right.
in entrepreneurship terms, meaning don't get into business unless you expect to be doing it for 10 years.
How interesting.
Yeah. And that's why I became a VC, because no one warned me. I said, if no one's warning me, maybe I should be a VC and warn other people of the perils of starting your business. Like you stumble along and no one gives you, like Fred Wilson's the OG.
Right.
And he always gave me great advice. And he said, go start StockTwits.
Yeah.
But he didn't give me money. He just said, that's a good idea. I can't invest in it because it's a competition with Twitter. And one day I'll be in a board meeting. And like he saw the future. He's like,
Right.
this is great. Twitter should do it. And then I said, Twitter doesn't want to do it. He goes, well, it's still a great idea. You should do it. But I can't invest.
Yeah. In
That's what
case
makes
Twitter
him the
ever
OG.
wants to do it. Yeah.
And other investors start calling me and saying, we think this is great. And I shouldn't have listened. But flash forward, and it's very successful.
Wait, why shouldn't you have listened?
Because 13 years.
Okay.
Who does anything for 13 years? Do you know what millennials? 13
But, like, if you-
seconds is a lot for a millennial.
But you're not a millennial, first of all. but say,
What are you saying? My skin does not look good? It's not
well,
glowing?
you already
He's
said that we're
insulting
old
me.
people earlier, but it was just to be clear, you're older than me. I
Wait a minute.
No, I'm assuming.
I'm 55. How old are you?
55. I'm 47. Yeah.
So I'm a little bit. I'm
Yeah, a little
8
bit.
years
Not
American.
too
I'm
much.
25 Canadian years older than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can
I'm
convert it.
70 Canadian.
Yeah, that's we'll talk about Canada
Yeah.
in a little bit, but staying on the subject of Robinhood and investing. First of all, with StockTwits, you could sell it at any time, right? Like,
You can
what's the
sell it. This is all the lessons that I learned. That's
Okay.
why probably I'm a pretty good VC at this point, is because I'm on both sides. There's people who say they've been on both sides of the table, because
Right.
this is us. You're an entrepreneur.
right?
And you're an investor. I feel now I'm an entrepreneur. When you flip something like I did with Wall Strip, it was 6 months.
Okay.
So everybody thought I was great. So this is the Silicon Valley problem. If you
Right.
tell people they're great, guess what they start to think?
They're great.
Yeah. This is why I tell my kids they're idiots. No, I don't. But they kind of are. No, my kids, we all want to tell our kids that they're great. Everybody gets a trophy and a lollipop, right? That's
Okay.
a generation. They didn't have to go fight Normandy. It's
Right.
not their fault.
Right.
That they
They
didn't
didn't
have to
have
get
hardship
shot.
in their life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I see a millennial and they go, "Oh, did you get your vaccine?" Just a trick question.
That's the
and they go,
hard-
"Yeah." And I go,
hardship.
"My arm hurts." I go, "Don't tell other people your arm hurts. You know what other people had to do during the last pandemic, for Christ's sakes?"
But
You
that's only
millennials?
older people. Like,
No, but they don't have context. It's not their fault
Right.
that they were born with YouTube and Netflix and Uber
right.
and
Har-
Tinder.
hardship to my kids is not having their smartphone for a
Not
couple
having Google
hours.
Maps
Right.
is hardship.
Yeah. That is
Actually.
pretty hard, actually.
Because we took my son's phone away a couple of years ago, and he didn't leave the house. I go, "You're not grounded.
Right.
You just don't have your phone." He goes, "Well, I don't know where to go."
Yeah.
He goes, "If I don't know where to go, I'm fucking grounded."
Yeah.
And I go, "Oh, Jesus." That's when I decided I'll never sell Google. It's for that product. You know what I mean?
They
It
have
may
s-
not be their moneymaker, but it
They have
is
like
their,
5 or 6 products that each have
you
a
can't
billion
quit,
plus users.
But you can't quit them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyways,
If you
what
wanted
I-
to sell, like
if
we
I
were talking
wanted
about
to sell, it would have been easy. But I didn't sell when I should have.
Okay.
And then when you want to sell, the stink of you want to sell is easy to smell.
Gotcha.
And if you truly want to sell, you either have to have massive scale
Right.
to give the acquirer something,
Right.
Well, you definitely need to be profitable.
And
because
you
they can't be costing these.
Yeah. Or you have to take a hit on valuation.
And after a while, I'm like, fuck it. I'll just figure out how to make it profitable.
Yeah.
And that makes you more attractive.
And then you don't want to sell because
now I don't want to sell because I'm like
you got a
what do I
business
need
that's
to
making some amount of money every
as
year.
long as we're investing in the product and
Right.
staying ahead of the competition, what's the point of selling? And those are the things you learn. You don't learn them by selling early and by having people tell you you're great. So the one thing Silicon Valley has is VCs telling entrepreneurs they're great before they've done anything. And that's just the game.
Right.
So I don't know, like those are part of the problems that we have to solve, but they'll get solved just by having founders all around the world now.
Right.
Remote work will solve this on its own. You know, it's kind of like Jurassic Park. Everything's like Jurassic Park. You put a couple of male dinosaurs in a theme park, they're still going to figure out a way to have babies. And so if anybody is confused, go watch Jurassic Park and go, wait a minute. Of course there's going to be velociraptors. I thought there was like 2 male dinosaurs. The next thing you know, they're overrunning the whole goddamn park.
That's a great movie, by the way.
Exactly. But that's, you know, it's much like that. The creativity just finds a way.
Right.
And hops over the wall. Like the first time you're in the movie, you're like, that fence doesn't look like it's going to hold back a velociraptor. And sure enough, you know.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. And, you know, China has a digital wall. We made a huge mistake there. We should have had a digital wall. The only way to have it.
Really?
Well, we should, if we wanted to keep China, if we wanted to get China to play fair, building a physical wall in Mexico is not how you get China to play fair.
Right.
We should have been moving all our businesses to Mexico and being friendlier with them to compete with China and forcing it. Instead, they got a digital wall and we got a wall in Mexico. So, you know, we haven't done a good job of protecting our own home turf.
Yeah.
You know, because Facebook's taking a hit. Maybe we hate them, but they're taking a hit because TikTok is a whole different way to acquire customers than paying Facebook for them. So, you know, things find a way.
Right.
And that's what's happening with technology. So that's the fun part where no matter how bad VCs will continue behaving bad and entrepreneurs will continue feeling entitled in Silicon Valley because that's just the way it is. But while they're doing that, there's a lot of hungry kids around the globe now that can use AWS and get funded and build on APIs and build huge businesses.
Yeah.
In new ways.
Let's talk about, I mean, so much there that I want to talk about actually, but like since you just mentioned China, let's talk about that for a moment. Do you think that the right approach for the U.S. to have is to have a digital wall and target specific countries rather?
Yeah.
Or do you think like we should just
I'm not a politician, but I have been to China.
Yeah.
So I guess that gives me more say than most. And the minute you get into China, you feel like they know everything about you. Right. Like, so that doesn't seem fair.
Yeah. And they have walled off access to things like Facebook.
Yeah, like you go to China, and have you been?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So you're staying in a 5-star hotel, and you walk a block away. It's like a Western movie at a Hollywood studio. It's all held up by stilts. Like what looks great, you just walk 300 feet, and you're like, holy fuck! Like that's the old West.
Maybe I haven't been to some parts of China.
No,
like
even in Beijing.
Shanghai and Beijing, they seem super like high tech.
No, it is, but you just walk an extra block and you'll see old China.
Okay.
Now they're continuing to fix it. Obviously, it's been a few years for me, but you know, I just think, you know, it's easy to hate on America, and we've gone through a really kind of rough period, and everybody does seem angry, right? COVID's over, shootings have started happening in schools, yada yada. It's horrific, the anger.
Right.
I don't know, you know, it comes from so many things, but we haven't figured out a way to just remind people how great America is.
Yeah.
As a Canadian, I remind myself, like, and I try and talk people like, guys, turn off your TV. Like, it's not so bad out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. With China, I feel like they have an unfair advantage. They get to come here. We don't get to go there. I don't think that's smart. And so you have to negotiate. And if we're negotiating, you have to negotiate. You got to hit them where it hurts. And digitally, they just own us.
Yeah.
And, you know, Tencent and Alibaba and those companies at some point are going to be bigger than American companies.
Versions of them, yeah.
Yeah. So why do I have to own them? I don't trust the financials. I don't trust anything about the country. And yet I have to own these stocks because the U.S. hasn't had a fair shot at competing in China.
Speaking of
from
their
a digital
stocks, like,
standpoint.
are we owning some phantom version of them? Because they also can't,
Exactly.
like, you can't really
It's like
own
some
Chinese
Cayman
companies, right?
thing. It's like you're just owning. This is why people that make fun of the markets, I go, have you looked at Alibaba? SEC
Right.
approved?
Like, this
it's
is what
not
I don't
even a
understand.
stock.
It's
It's
a-
like
it's
a
a-
tracking stock.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a token.
Why would anybody buy those?
Well, why? This is why you have crypto. Well, all the adults are saying, you're stupid. The kids are saying, well, you own some fake Alibaba thing in the Cayman Islands that probably isn't got a tie to anything.
Right. It doesn't have a tie to
So,
anything.
so
Like, it
Alibaba,
legitimately,
you
like,
could argue that Alibaba is the original NFT. Because do you really own Alibaba? Or do you own some cooked up version based on trust that this is Alibaba?
right, right.
I mean, we're not buzzed, but that's basically where you have to go with this. Is like the markets are built on this level
That's
of
a
trust.
really good analogy that Alibaba's stock is like NFT.
The original.
Yeah.
GameStop is the modern version of it. It's trading in unrelated to anything except the mood of the people that own it.
Yeah.
That's an NFT.
Well,
It's a piece of art. It has no value other than what people say the value is today. There is literally no basis in valuing it. So it is a crossover
there's
to
a
the
lot
world
of
of digital.
there's a lot of stocks that are in that boat
There's a lot of stocks over the years that have been in that boat.
at some period of time.
Tesla has fundamentals. There is
Right.
no fundamental related to GameStop. It's a bunch of kids saying this is what it's worth,
Right.
and we're gonna fucking own it, and we're gonna own it to own the suits.
I
What
was-
a terrible way to invest.
No,
But
I
it's-
couldn't agree more. Like the argument there is like extremely flawed. Like
Yeah.
trying to take down hedge funds or whatever.
Yeah.
But when I looked at GameStop in particular, a few things shocked me. One is how high the revenue of that company is, which is like $5 billion. Its valuation was like,
That's bad revenue.
I mean, it's retailer.
But it's bad revenue. The margins suck.
Yeah, but the margins on Carvana suck.
But I wouldn't own Carvana. I mean,
But like Carvana is that's what I'm talking about. Like it's a, Carvana.
it's a bit of an NFT. Everything
I mean,
today
let's
is
not
an
bring
NFT.
NFT into it because I just want to like go back to traditional sort of like investing in stocks. Carvana is like a $5 billion also revenue company with horrible margins,
Yeah.
15% roughly, or
Yeah.
12%, something like that,
Yeah.
with a $46 billion valuation. Now, their revenue is on the way up, so they're
Yeah, but
growing
unless it's
every year.
growing 200% a year, the people are nuts.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
there's no way the math gets there in our lifetime. I agree.
That's how I view it, but I feel like maybe I'm wrong because I viewed
You're
it that
not
way when it
wrong.
first IPO'd, and I was like, it's gone up 10x since then, and I'm like, wow, I completely missed out on Carvana in my backyard.
But that's the joy of investing, right? It's the
Missing out
ultimate
on-
fantasy. It's you get to the plate. This is
Right.
why Robinhood's so cool, and fractional investing and crypto is everybody gets to play.
Right.
No, they package it in like you got to be smart and you shouldn't use lever. I get all that. But the hardcore reason why crypto, why Wall Street Bets, StockTwits, Telegram, game. This is all fascinating because they recoded the language because of the Big Short and because of all these things and CDS
Right.
and all these fancy terms. You know what kids just said? This is fucking betting. And once kids figured out it was just betting, they can do betting. They've been betting on sports their whole time. They've been dealing with bookies and their weed agents and wherever they get their weed and their drugs. They're from DraftKings to their bookie on the weekends betting sports. They know how to make bets, or not.
Right.
And the house wins generally. The house continues to win if you look at Coinbase's valuation and Robinhood and eToro and soon Binance and all these exchanges.
Right.
They make their rake. They're the house.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's just people have decided that it's fun. Like the house wins, but we're going to try and beat the house. And that was my ultimate bet is like you give people a smartphone and a
But-
social network, they're going to want to play the game.
But these guys are not betting against the house, right? Right. Like
They think
they're-
they have an edge, which is mistaken.
Right.
The markets are bigger than everybody, including Archegos and
Including the hedge funds.
including Goldman and Archegos. Like if you
Yeah.
look at Goldman stock, it's gone nowhere in 10 years, and Coinbase has come along. It's a bigger valuation than Coinbase, so they can argue all
Overnight.
along like how stupid everybody is. They're stupid.
Right.
You know that argument? You're stupid. Well, no,
No.
you're stupid. Guess who's stupid? Goldman in their own way. They've deteriorated their brand. Where if you're an employee there the last 10 years, you've made no money. Because the stock's gone nowhere. So why is Goldman losing? They have a brain drain. You've got to be a dumb kid to go work at Goldman because your stock options are worthless. So they can't win. They're cornered animals. They can invest,
Right.
and they can invest in startups like Plaid and make great investments because they're not dumb. Everybody knows how to invest, but their business is deteriorating on a day-to-day basis, along with their brand. And so, going sideways is kind of a win, but eventually, Coinbase and Binance and FTX and newer banks that come along and neobanks are going to chip away, chip away.
Okay, so again, a lot of stuff there that I want to unpack.
Sorry, I'm running around on topics on you.
No, it's perfect because I love the way your brain works on all these investing topics. But one of the first things is, like, do you believe that investing is just betting, and you essentially are betting against someone? Yes. I mean, like, is that how you
zero
view
sum?
It? You view it as a zero-sum game. Okay.
I view certain things as zero-sum. Options betting.
Well, that's for sure. But like when you buy a company, like let's say somebody believes in Tesla, they buy that stock. Yeah. Do you think in order for that person to win, someone else has to lose?
Yes. Generally, short-term, lots of people are losing. For the long-term, people to win. They're paying commissions. They're running around on a treadmill. They're trying to bet on a price of Tesla within a certain period of time because they want to use less capital. They don't have the capital to play fully. So I think the whole thing is centered around betting. I just place longer term. When everybody's betting in a scrum,
right,
the real way to bet is to not be in the scrum, is to stand as far away from the scrum as possible.
So invest in the long term.
I invest in the long term.
If you're
it's very hard when you see a price of your company every day to think long term.
Yeah.
So part of the stock market's flaw is its beauty.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know what their portfolio is worth. It's the
moment.
Worst thing that you can do.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, for sure.
Is to see the value.
Like your house
I feel great today.
Your house is your best investment.
Zillow.
Largely
Why
is
Zillow so popular? It's pouring for, you get to see the value of all your homes in your neighborhood. You see what your neighbor's worth.
But generally, you don't have the option of selling it overnight and then rebuying the same house tomorrow.
If the stock market was open twice a year, people would be better investors, right? But then there'd be a whole industry
That's
of
actually a
people
freaking great idea. Stock market should only be open twice a year.
You go run that campaign in Arizona, you will even lose to Ducey. You won't beat anybody with that campaign because people want their crack.
No.
And I can't. Are guns a good idea at some level? Yeah, it's America. But do we need AR-17 bullets at Walmart? Fuck no.
Right.
Sorry, for the people that think I'm an idiot, they don't need it.
Right.
Because guess what? Drones. You're so worried about protecting yourself from the government. Well, guess what? They're just going to drop. They'll use drones.
They have tanks and nuclear weapons.
No, they have drones.
And drones. Yeah, of course. But
have they not watched The Terminator? You don't need bullets.
Right.
They have drones. So the arguments are so dumb. The short-term betting creates the opportunity.
Okay.
So I look at everything in bets, and I didn't always think like this. When you're growing up in your own industry, you're like protected. Oh, no, this is an art. Stock market is not a game. I've come full circle.
Okay.
Because it was just packaging.
Yeah.
And I bought into the original packaging, which is just like, ooh, exclusive. No, that's a myth. The COVID also gave a lot of myths, exposed a lot of myths. This was a myth of packaging. And it went from Wall Street to Vanguard, and it's back. Now it's in retail's hands, where it should be.
Right.
Because Bitcoin is a retail product. The institutions are just getting in now.
Yeah.
This should be the most incredible story about. This started out with like Yoni and guys like me at 12 cents.
Yeah.
And the banks weren't talking about it. Now they're talking about it going to 400,000. The retail guys have made a fortune.
Right.
So we're flipping all these things on their head. You and I are struggling this because we're used to cash flow and we're used to multiples from a textbook that we read and Warren Buffett, and there's a lot of truth to it.
Right.
And if we were betting people, we would try and make a bet with as little money to be proven correct. I don't waste my time with that.
Yeah.
So I just say Carvana, GameStop,
I'm out
God bless.
of those two.
Just take them off your screen, people. You can't participate in everything. And so I want to take advantage of all the people betting and think about how wrong they are in 10 years. So, founder-led companies, I call them 8 to 80 brands. Zoom, Facebook, even though you may hate them, Google, Amazon,
These are the ones that
Spotify,
you do
Shopify.
like.
Yeah, like they
Yeah.
can't wreck them.
Yeah.
So the short-term bettors, let them do their thing.
Okay, but you don't view those as bets, or
I
do
view
you?
them as bets on the long term, like they're going to be here in 20 years.
But okay, so like
I don't worry about the
I guess
bettors in the
when
short term. What
When
the
somebody
price is.
says betting, I think of gambling, right? Like and
Well,
gambling.
that's part of the problem. Betting shouldn't be considered gambling. Why are they tied? Gambling is gambling.
Okay.
Betting is a way to express something.
Okay.
I bet you.
I got
that
you.
my
So
team
maybe
wins.
it's a terminology issue. But
Yes.
but so you're betting on these companies that you feel have a future. They're founder led. Your expectation is that these companies' valuations
Will be
continue
bigger.
to rise
Yes.
over time.
Because the pie around GDP grows. So as
Right.
much as I think
So it's not
zero-sum,
zero sum, but because the pie gets bigger, it's not completely
that's
zero
why
sum,
it's,
right?
that's why you invest long term. The
Right.
pie is going to get bigger.
Yeah.
If you don't believe the pie is going to get bigger, move to Russia,
Right.
start a pogrom. I don't know what you should do, but like get out of America.
But that's a
because-
really good point. That a lot of people who advocate for zero sum, they don't talk about the GDP pie getting bigger.
Then they really are missing the point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And right now, that GDP pie getting bigger is getting largely influenced by monetary policies like the U.S. pumping
Correct.
out like trillions of dollars
Correct.
in stimulus money.
Correct.
What do you think about that? And how that might
think-
affect things long term?
I think we could yell into Twitter and type with our thumbs all day long and make fun of the Fed.
Okay.
Or you could look at what they're doing and read the tea leaves and go, this is what happens historically when the government does this. Asset prices go up.
Yeah.
Now, we have to think of the unintended circumstances, which is part of our job, making long-term bets,
Right.
which is what could happen over 10 years. Well, it's obvious. Crypto is now
The thing.
new form of hedge, or a new form of what enough people believe the religion of, which is this religion, a new gold religion,
Right.
which is probably closer to the truth than anything else, which is if you believe that there's a fixed amount of something, those prices should start going up as the government does this and as the economy now comes out of this.
With Bitcoin, first of all, are you a Bitcoin bull?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Tell me
hate
the
word
reasons
bull.
why.
I'm long.
Okay, long. Yeah,
Meaning
yeah.
I don't like to tell people what to do. I'll
And-
tell them what I'm doing. I
And
own
for
it.
you, is it just Bitcoin, or are you like
No,
crypto?
So I've been lucky. I mean, I am very much tech idiot, meaning I'll lose shit, I'll lose passwords. I'm scared of, stuff. My password's the same for everything. It actually scares the criminals. Like, oh, he couldn't be this dumb. It's a trick. And
What are your kids' names and birth dates? Just kidding.
in reverse.
Okay.
So the idea of Bitcoin, to me, like anything investing, who's telling me? Why are they telling me?
Right.
That's all that matters. And the fact that Yoni, Chris Dixon, Fred Wilson, who have nothing to gain by promoting, I mean, they do, I guess. They report to their LPs. But, like, they have nothing but reputation risk.
Right.
I like betting with people who are in it and they have a lot of reputation risk. And, yeah, they'll get rich if they're right, but they're not in it.
To get, I mean,
Well,
yeah.
they're not promoting just to promote.
Right.
We're all promoters, but so I'd like to know who's saying it and why.
Yeah. There's some credibility there. These are people who are
and there's so
doing
much
things.
reputation risk when
Right.
they're wrong. Meaning, it's not in their interest to just be a promoter,
Yeah.
like a regular promoter, because they got to live with this shit the rest of their lives, and they're already rich. And that's the difference of Wall Street versus the new great investors, is the alignment's way better.
Yeah.
Fred has to talk on his blog every day, right?
Yeah.
He can't disappear for a month after a bad call. This is why I trust certain people. They show up. You
Right.
can find them. And CNBC, my big argument with CNBC is like, you bring some dude on and you say he's an expert, but what has he been saying in the last 10 years?
Right. I hate that about
well,
CNBC.
it's just they can't fix it,
I
and they don't even try and fix it.
I can't stand them.
Well,
I mean,
that's what I'm
they-
saying. So
yeah.
that's been, and guess what? Guess what's still popular today? CNBC.
Right.
So, like, we have a lot of disruption still to do. And that's why, well, I mean, CNBC, their TV ratings must be terrible. And if they're good, they're not because of the daytime TV. It's because their business shows at night or,
Right,
Shark Tank or
Tank
whatever.
or-
But so reputation, who says it and why? Well, I was there when Yoni told me about it at 12 cents. If I call him today, he's already a billionaire. he's going to be honest with me. He's like, no, I'm long. I wish I
Yeah.
hadn't sold what I sold.
Yeah.
That's enough for me. Now, how much I put in is based on why should I ask them? When
Right.
people tell me, oh, you should have 2% of your assets in this, I'm like, who the hell says that? What? They don't know anything about me.
Right.
Okay. So, but I'm kind of that guy that says, 2% sounds about right. No, personally.
Right,
I
right.
don't know. I don't really have any use for it.
Yeah.
I still like cash, and I use I don't really need Bitcoin. So it was always this weird thing that it was cheering it on.
So before we got into the Bitcoin discussion, though, we were talking about monetary policy and the stimulus money. Does that concern you at all? And is a Bitcoin a hedge against that for you?
If you look at the price, it's been a great hedge.
Right.
The best of all time. Meaning it's not a hedge, it's just a great asset.
Of course. But
Yeah.
many people think of it as a Ponzi scheme, and it's just...
Well, everything's a Ponzi scheme. So is Christianity.
Exactly.
So is Judaism. Well, I mean, I'm a Jew, but still, the stories were great when you're 8, and now you're like, what? The guy, he came down with a stone and had the tank. Come on. Tell me a better story now that I'm 55. And what is religion other than a Ponzi scheme of some dude or the guy who originally found gold? He came down somewhere, he's like, dude, look at this rock. It's like you can't, you can make teeth out of it.
Right. That's my comparison always.
It has to be
my
gold.
go-to comparison is
Yeah.
gold. It's like it's value.
Came out of the ground. Some guy goes, can't find any more of it.
It has
therefore,
very limited actual value from a product usage standpoint. Its real value is based on people's
generations of people saying it's worth something.
Yeah.
And if it's been a great asset to own.
Right.
Period. People can make fun of it or whatever. It's just been a great asset to own.
So with Bitcoin,
but how do you own it? Through an ETF? That always seemed fake to me.
Gold.
So yeah, what am I going to do if the Germans come for me again or whatever? Whatever Jews worry about. It's like, well, if I can't carry it, that makes no sense anymore.
Right.
Because they're not going to have time. They're not going to say you got 48 hours. They're going to put a gun in your mouth and say move, and I'm like going to go, well, at least I got my crypto wallet somewhere. And so that makes sense to me. Like the
Right.
one use case. So 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. It was no problem for me.
Right.
To speculate. Because I could make up a story in my head. It was like, if I got to move to Amsterdam tomorrow and have to leave everything,
you can
I
take
could survive.
your Bitcoin with
I could take my social network and my crypto. And I don't know which is worth more. Probably my social network is worth more.
For sure. But you need something to get started
Yeah.
with.
So really, your social network is your true currency.
Right.
Which is why the name of my fund. The more you have a network that you've built trust with, the richer you are.
Right.
Because you can get up jams anywhere in the world.
If you had to start over tomorrow, you can...
I can start with just Twitter.
Yeah.
And ask for favors because I've been putting in deposits my whole life or the last 15 years. But with crypto, what's weird about this part of crypto is I made a lucky speculative decision to put more money in. Not more money, just enough money, but pay other people to do it for me. Meaning I don't want to have wallets. And I don't want to see I knew that my own flaw was if I see Bitcoin go to 20,000, I'm a seller. And I needed to remove that part of my brain. And what Wall Street's
review
done,
of
the daily review of how much I'm worth. And Wall Street had done a terrible job of that.
Yeah.
They've hedge funds have ripped people off, and Wall Street's been telling you set and forget and just do Vanguard and do diversification because that started to work. And they invested so many tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing. That's that way of the world. And all of a sudden we flip back to active. And they can't pull the trigger because they've got decades of research saying people shouldn't do this.
Right.
So now they're worried about how dumb they'll look when they say, "Oh, let's own crypto," right? They're flawed.
Yeah.
And they're flawed, and this is where 140 characters comes in. It's much easier to change your mind if you've only written 140 characters worth of research against Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because then someone will say, well, you hated Bitcoin. Yeah, it was one tweet
Yeah.
in 2013, but I've now written volumes of why I'm bullish.
Yeah.
So, I was probably over the years making fun of Bitcoin along the way, but it was such a small part, and I didn't fully understand it. All of a sudden, you flash forward to 2020, 2021, that little part of my portfolio, I call it the flippening, because of the investments that I've made on the crypto side, are bigger than my net worth on the physical side. It's bananas.
That's crazy.
And if that's happening to me at 55, a semi-believer, right, with very few use cases for myself, hold on to your hats. because we've already had a crash, and that was in 2017. So the idea that we're going to have a crash of the similar type, I feel a little bit skeptical about that. I feel there'll be 70, 80% potential pullback in most of these, but there's something else going on here. And it could be the Fed printing, it could be the interest rate, it could be globalization, it could be China, it could be a million things.
Right.
But the fact is, it's still here standing. And the fact is, there's many more people like me that are of a certain age that didn't want to believe, now are like struggling to like manage the digital assets in their life.
Right.
That's bananas.
Yeah.
And I call it the flippening. They used to say the flippening was, Bitcoin, Ethereum would pass Bitcoin. I call the flippening when your assets in the digital world surpass your assets in the physical world.
In the real world.
And I'm just learning as I go. I'm just lucky that I participated. Now I'm like, I don't even know how to bring everything back.
Right.
So I've got to learn. So I'm just living that life myself.
Yeah. I mean, so the question is,
and you can't steal it from me because I gave it to other people.
Yeah.
So it's like the perfect thing. Like no one can put a gun in my hand and say, give me your Bitcoin. I go, well, I don't know where it is.
Right.
So I think there's all kinds of new phenomenons. And I think I think it's fun to be a little bit wealthy because you have this sense of freedom. And there's different responsibilities. And I'm just trying to figure out what the next stages of this investing, wealth management, growth, how to get more people involved, how to get people investing.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Do you feel like that Bitcoin is somewhat special from the standpoint of rest of the cryptocurrency because everything else is created by someone or some entity or company that benefits from its early minings and such? Or
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at who told me about it originally, Yoni from military in Israel, maybe it is the U.S. or the Israeli military or some military
that's behind it.
Yeah. Thinking about who I heard it from originally.
Right.
And he was in the elite information wing of the military. Young guy, but like it's a dark web product. It was how people exchange money for drugs, but that's every cash product: drugs, porn, weapons. So,
but this one has a permanent ledger too. So it's like
the ledger is the key thing.
Right.
Come on, it's genius. And then the second thing is the religion getting stronger.
Yeah.
And all religions have believers and non-believers. And the third thing is, if there truly is, the code is what the smart people say. There is only 21 million. So take that to the bank.
Right.
Now, you wake up tomorrow and we find out there's 600 million Bitcoins. It goes to zero pretty fast, right?
For sure.
Pretty hard to repackage that story
right.
at 600 million Bitcoins. So that's the risk.
But
I mean, that's the ultimate risk.
I don't know if you've looked at the details of the technology. Do you feel sound about it? Like because the more I learn about it, the more I feel comfortable with the technology that's behind it.
I don't want to learn more. So I'm watching a show on Netflix, Shitzel or whatever, with the religious, Jewish people that study the Talmud all the time. I don't want to sit around studying the code every day.
Right.
If this goes back to my point, if Yoni, Chris Dixon, and Fred Wilson are still directionally along, what am I doing?
You're sort of like
I'm not looking
relying
to poke holes.
You're relying on other people's
relying
sort
on
of
the
like
people
knowledge.
that got me interested in it.
Right.
They will eventually blog about it. Maybe not at the top, but after it drops 30 or 50%, after someone tells them to rethink their thinking, I'll wait till they write a white paper, and then I'll rethink my thinking.
Gotcha.
Everything else is noise for me.
Right.
That's betting. Everybody wants to bet on the near-term outcomes. Well, I'm betting on the longer-term outcome, which is I'm following Fred, Chris, and Yoni until they're wrong. That's risky.
Yeah.
But I figure that's less risky than everybody else out there.
Does
that make sense to you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, basically,
it's not rocket science. It's not
basically
rocket
what
science.
you've decided is that there's people who you trust with various different domain expertise, and you're gonna like.
Yes, and the big lie has been don't pay these people 2 and 20.
Right.
The big truth is pay the fucking fees, and if you were a cocaine addict in the 90s in Miami, you got to get the Colombian Coke, right? And you get the Colombian Coke. And you risk your life. I'm not saying you're a drug dealer, but this is the analogy I like using. And you party, and you go, fuck, that was a good party. But you know what? It was risky, and I could have just done the Miami Coke and had a little baby powder in it. You know what I mean? And still just pretty much the same buzz. And it's just, that's investing too. Do you want to get directly up close to the source and yeah, some things you are like around trading. I knew Robin, like the source was
Right.
me, and I continued to stick to my knitting in that area and think of what I would do. But once you step outside your knowledge base, man, to think that you're going to be an expert in more than one or two things, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm now part of that. Like, I'll pay experts to do things for me, and I won't negotiate. I will let them make a good living doing it. And that's the fallacy of Vanguard,
Gotcha.
in my opinion.
Yeah. So you actually just mentioned pay the big lie is don't pay the 2 and 20.
Yeah.
But that's like bad advice or whatever. Speaking of the 2 and 20, and this is, maybe you can elaborate on what the 2 and 20 means, but you're essentially referring to the fees of a
Just
fund.
the fees or an advice, someone who's good at what they do.
Yeah. So I want to bring it back to like social leverage and what you guys are doing
Sure.
with, and you're currently raising a fund.
We just raised our fourth fund. Breaking news.
Okay.
Yeah, it's done, completed.
How much did you guys raise?
Over 90.
90 million in Fund 4, and it's because of the huge track record you guys have had that
I don't know. I mean, we talk about this all the time. As honest as I get. Fund 1 was hard. Fund 2 was really hard. Fund 3 was
Easy.
punch to the face.
Really?
Can't believe I hated the whole industry. I had other ideas for how I wanted to disrupt my own industry based
Right.
on the process. And then phase 4, which should have been the hardest, was the easiest because I think Zoom, our track record.
Were you guys in
age-
Zoom?
No, but I think Zoom
Oh,
destroyed
oh.
many myths.
Gotcha.
Meaning, do you need to fly to Baltimore overnight to go
I
shake
see.
the hand of a gatekeeper that really isn't doing their work and really just wants to be in Sequoia and Union Square and Andreessen? Meaning the gatekeepers aren't doing their work.
Right.
This is the lie.
Yeah.
This is the Velociraptors. The Velociraptors, we are the Wall Street bets, you and I, we're the Velociraptors. We're fucking pissed. We're surrounding our enemy because the gatekeepers suck and they're telling you lies. And not all of them, but like most of them aren't doing the work.
Yeah.
And they're protecting their moat. How did E-Trade get disrupted? Not because the CEO was dumb, but because they had these layers of product teams to get their marketing, because they figured it cost $350 to buy a customer. And those people that were involved in that $350 were protecting their jobs. So
Right.
when someone comes out and said, you should drop your commissions to zero, 100 employees who were involved in the $350
Would have had to be let go.
or fired themselves. That ain't happening. That's why disruption happens. Eventually these costs drop and people don't want to lose their jobs, so they protect the moat, and you can't protect the moat.
Yeah.
It's the old Jurassic Park thing. So that's the joy of what I do. The more people I tell that to, it's just common sense. It's just, do you have the confidence to do it? It's okay if you don't. Then go be a number 2 or a number 10 at one of these companies, right? You don't have to found it. You don't have to be the founder. There's lots of great companies where you can be employee 10 and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
I know a lot of employee 10s around the world.
That are a million.
They're not that bright.
Yeah.
But
No.
they're smarter than me because they went and got aboard a rocket ship
Right.
and they hung on really tight.
So you guys just raised 90 million for Fund 4. Is there a focus area for like
You've
the
met
funds?
me. What would your answer be?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a financial component or
Yeah.
focus.
Tom and Gary are my partners. Great crew. Tom and I went to ASU together. Gary, we had invested in his company called Assistly, which is an enterprise company. Gary's enterprise whiz. Great product guy, great person, great people person, great actual experience at a big organization. His company was bought by Salesforce, and he ran a big team. I have no experience other than, flapping my jaws and being right occasionally. So we just are 3 people that have very strong opinions about how the world looks, and
What are some of the companies you guys have invested in?
For me, more of the same continues to be, how do we get millions more people investing and trying to make a buck, right? Betting smarter.
Okay.
So first it was like, how do we get more people betting,
Right.
investing, trading, whatever you want to call it, not gambling,
Okay.
right? But because gambling implies that you're just waking up and going green.
Yeah.
I don't think that's smart.
Yeah.
But talking to your friends, making bets is interesting. Whether it's called trading or investing, I don't care anymore. And, So like flash forward, you know how it's going to be. Robinhood will be fine, and in 3 years when you open the app, it'll say Robinhood causes cancer. There'll be like a page that says with a dead baby. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because that's how America works. Like we're going to let you have Robinhood.
The vilification of
like go look at a cigarette package.
Yeah. I want to talk about the vilification too.
People are still smoking, and on the package it just says you could pick a funeral plot out when you buy a cigarette. Like you can sign up for your funeral plot with your cigarette pack.
In some countries that have the worst sort of pictures and stuff, they actually order them by the picture. It's like I want the dead baby, cigarettes or whatever. But before
that's funny.
Before we talk about the vilifications of companies, what are some of the companies' social leverage? Just like name off some of them, like 4 or 5.
A recent one that Gary did is a company called. I'm not good at describing Gary's companies. One that we did that's just hilarious is Manscaped.
Okay.
Which is a San Diego company, which shave our balls. We'll do this after the podcast. I'll shave yours, you shave mine.
We might have to take a rain check on that one.
All right, breaking news. No, but we use a local San Diego. We don't do DTC.
Okay.
But so our thesis is probably 40% or 50% finance, 50% enterprise and some healthcare enterprise, and whatever Gary fancies. And let's say it's 40-40 and 20% eclectic. Great founder walks in the room.
So it could be retail, like
could be anything but probably biotech or robots or AI.
Why not those 3?
I have no idea.
Okay. Just
literally no idea.
No domain knowledge.
No domain knowledge. No interest. Scared of it.
Yeah.
Way over my pay grade. Why would I do that?
Gotcha.
What edge do I have? Manscaped comes in, and I manscape. I don't shave my balls. But my chest, my arm. I'm like a beast over here. Like hair is growing as we speak. And at places that I don't want it to grow.
Right.
And that's just a truth.
Right.
You can joke about that's
but
why
literally, there have
you're
been,
laughing, but it's true.
No, it's true. I'm
it's
Iranian.
Our eyebrows,
like
it's our ear. It's just not where we want it to grow.
I basically have to shave twice a day. But the Manscaped, what was special about that? Because they're basically
founder.
Okay, the founder, because he's basically reselling.
The founder.
He's
he
reselling.
Had been pitching me ideas for years in San Diego, and I kept saying no. I loved the kid, and I said, you can do better. It was like an AngelList this, and like a this and that, and he started a skin cream company.
But this is not a product company. Like he's just
taking... It is literally a product company and a brand. But originally it started as a Chinese thing that he ordered from China that was like a bronze shaver.
Right.
With cool packaging and a good domain that said, don't nick your balls, like a razor that didn't nick your balls.
Right.
And he went with the joke and the whole thing.
So it's really a marketing company, if anything.
So
right?
it's not a typical social leverage company because, correct, it's not a software company.
Okay. But
you're
not just a
software.
software.
Pretty good at interviewing.
But my point is that it's not even a product company.
It's not even anything. It's silly.
Okay.
But he liked it, and we liked him, and we believe.
And now it's like $1 billion company?
At least. It did $300 million, and it's
on
pace to do
mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing.
That is incredible. Because
and how much money
it's
do you
like
think
the dollar
Tell
shave club,
to get
right?
in a DTC. Because first of all, I will never do a DTC company because
I don't know what
buying
DTC
customers
is,
on
by the way.
direct to consumer.
Okay.
Meaning you got to go pay Facebook for your customers. And
These guys are direct to consumer.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now they're in Target and Walmart. They're everywhere.
Okay.
They're omni-channel. I'm learning all
I
the
would
buzz
guess
terms.
they've raised $20 million.
Yeah, less.
Really?
And that's just incredible.
That is incredible.
To build a global brand.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah. And I just marvel at that. Now,
so
we have domain experience? Yes. I have 2 kids. My son, I know, shaves. Every millennial shaves because they have time.
Right.
They don't have the same stress as you and I. They're not going uphill through snow to trade stocks and watch a video. Yeah. They can literally groom their balls all day and show them on Tinder for all we know. We don't know what they're doing with their groomed balls. We do know
like
this.
To not think about that.
You shouldn't, but we do know this. If you asked your teen son, or your daughter, because she'll buy it for her boyfriend or whoever. But if you ask your teen kid if they shave, they will tell you no, which is the other way you find winners, is find something that people are doing and they're either not telling you because the focus reports are wrong and all the, right? And find a market that's bigger than what people think it is. And we got lucky with Manscaped. Our intuition around me shaving my chest and my ugly body at 55 parlayed itself into a much bigger audience.
So what was special about this founder? Like that you guys...
He knew marketing. He knew how to just tell a story.
Yeah.
And then he's just executed way beyond, just like Robinhood. You can't predict billion.
Yeah.
I just said at a 4 million valuation or 8 million, whatever we're going to do it at, we're going to make money.
Right.
If this kid can deliver what we think. And he's just gone well beyond anything that we could have imagined.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So a lot of social leverages investments, or vast majority of them, are outside the state of Arizona, right? Like even...
Yes. We made our hay before we started LifeLock, Golf Now, and I started Wall Strip in Phoenix. So,
Okay.
So I was 3 for 3 coming out of being a hedge fund guy locally.
Gotcha.
So I'm not bearish on Arizona.
Right.
But I think, being friends with Brad Feld and Boulder and understanding how they build community, everybody around the world thinks, it's that old, if you build it, they will come. I still believe that. I think what's happened in like a city like Phoenix is it's a big fucking city.
Yeah.
About 5 million people spread over bazillion miles. It's like LA.
It's huge.
So you can't just say, I'm going to build it. You just do it. And if you do a good job, people will come. And then you go to the next step, right? Like you can't just say, why, I don't know anything about Phoenix. I just know that now I'm here in COVID. I don't want to travel as much. Like I'm hoping, like I came here, I'm hoping to network locally. There's enough good founders if we can help them. But while travel was easy and Silicon Valley had its thing and New York had its thing, you had to fish where the fish were.
Right.
Now, a lot of us are going to look back and go, wait a minute, I don't want to schlep to Silicon Valley and deal with those crazy people in their evaluations. Let's figure out what's happening locally.
Right.
So that's one of the benefits of COVID.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to now come back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the vilification. Robinhood just went through that. They, basically, they stopped people from trading one day.
Yeah.
And basically, they had a revolt of users and even politicians who were like, these guys are essentially helping the hedge funds. Mm-hmm. We quickly jumped to vilify founders, companies. Bernie Sanders is tweeting about, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk being the sort of like the villains in his story, like of trying to create better equality, right? Like, what are your thoughts about some of that stuff?
Well, I don't want to be a politician because that would just be an underachievement at many levels. I think locally matters, right? So I love my community. I love Coronado where I lived. I love Phoenix where I live, the Biltmore, the Camelback Corridor. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not going to. Tempe's not on my mind.
Right.
North Scottsdale's not on my mind. But then I joined a club up here, so then North Scottsdale's on my mind, and I love it up here. But if the right people ask me, I'll chip in locally.
Right.
But we can't all think globally. And I think the world's gone mad thinking we got to help everybody. I think you have to start locally and chip in, clean your street, take care of your neighborhood, help the people that you can help.
Right.
But I think we went through this era where you could just fly across the world for dinner, and we just forgot about local. And so I'm hoping that we kind of revert back to a more local feeling.
What do you think the vilification is coming from?
The vilification is just we talked about earlier. I don't know why people are so angry in corporate America.
They want someone to point to.
The world likes a witch hunt. In the old days, they would string them up. And I think we've lost a good opportunity to string people up that deserved it. The bankers in 2008. They walked away. Do we blame, I forget the guy's name at the time, Obama's guy and Obama. We let them, there should have been a perp walk. There'd probably be a little bit less anger if some of the Goldman people had done perp walks. And who did it really help? Nobody. Goldman's still doomed in the long term at some level. So there's reasons people are mad.
Right.
And then I get why people are mad at Amazon because they're mean. They're a big corporation. You can't negotiate with them. I mean, they're nice to their customers, but they're not nice to their vendors.
Right.
So the vilification comes partly because it's deserved. I don't think Robinhood handled it that great.
Right.
But I don't know what I would have done in real time. So I can't judge them there. But in the scope of things, I don't like a lot of the way they handled it.
Yeah.
But it's not my job. I'm just an investor watching like everybody else.
Yeah.
Kind of horrified myself. And I don't know. I've been trading for 30 years. I don't even know what happened. I mean, what happened is somebody called somebody and said, you need to, what really happened is someone said, you guys need to deposit money.
$3 billion, right?
That's what I think happened.
Well, that's
How
what
he
said.
handled it, we can argue all day long.
Yeah.
Let's say he didn't handle it well. But this call still went down.
Right.
Get us $3 billion, or we're shutting you down. The
Right.
people saying shut Robinhood down don't understand any of the mechanics.
Right.
They're arguing against the thing that helps them.
So do you think there should have been like better investigations of what we need to change at the system?
Someone should demand a copy of the letter and who wrote it, and let's find out why they got the call when they got the call.
You're very much for the sort of investigation.
I'm very much for transparency.
And also
The
like
gotcha, we gotcha, Vlad. You probably lied somewhere along the way, and the lawyers made you do it, and protecting your investors made you do it. But I hope he did. I don't know for sure. I'm just saying there's many gotchas.
There might be gotchas.
But the real thing is, let's now figure out how this happened. Why it's good for Robinhood, and I think people are mad, is Robinhood patched a hole.
Right.
So if you have a security breach, whether you use Cloudflare or whatever you're using, security, it gets smarter.
Yeah.
Guess what Robinhood just got? $3 billion in the bank, and that same hole is not going to be breached again. So for people, like that story is not going to happen again. The move's going to be somewhere else, and it could be 3 years away. It came out, and it turns out part of the story is Archegos. The reason these things are so volatile is because everybody directionally has bet 10 different ways with the leverage, and no one even knows what they own. And so Robinhood was kind of a victim of all these bets made by Archegos or whatever, and the banks. And Robinhood woke up one day because of that and had to make a $3.5 billion deposit. So if we knew the trail of communication, this goes back to why Bitcoin and the ledger is there. There's a record.
Right.
There's no record of gold. There's a record of what the government says there's a record. Do we know how much gold is out there? No,
but it's not
way.
verifiable by everyone.
No way.
Which is what is awesome and unique about Bitcoin.
And that's why Bitcoin will keep going up until either Bitcoin, they find something better,
right,
the mob,
or it hits equilibrium where
it
has universal adoption.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that does not seem like, is that 30,000 or 300,000? I have no idea. But I'll wait to see Fred, Chris.
Considering there's only 100 million people who have adopted it so far,
it seems like it's going to go much higher. And the volatility is a feature, not a bug.
Right.
If it stayed calm, no one would care.
Right.
And what makes GameStop interesting, what will make GameStop boring is when it settles on a price and everybody just agrees, right? And they'll move on to, the mob will move on to the next thing. Right. What bugs me about the vilification is it's always the same thing. It's just a mob.
Yeah.
And they're an angry mob. And the quieter you stand while the mob's doing its thing, the faster it passes you by.
Yeah.
You'll say something on Twitter and people go, oh, you're in trouble. And I can either delete it or I can make it worse by inciting the mob.
Right.
Or I can just stand there and just
watch.
Apologize. And that's all you can do is apologize. And guess what the mob does? They flame you for 10 minutes. But you've apologized. So they get bored.
Right.
And they go into the person who's inciting the riot. And so the thing that bugged me the most about the Robinhood thing is Davey Barstool, Portnoy, who the kids love, he runs a gambling site. There's no doubt that he's running a gambling site. So every Sunday, kids make bets on games.
Right.
And half the kids lose their money. And he's on TV on, like, Tucker Carlson saying the Robinhood guy should be in jail. This is who Tucker Carlson's hot take is with the
right.
So it's like, who are we getting who's riling up the crowds?
Yeah.
It's just horrific behavior. And I would hope my kids and my wife would warn me before I do stupid things like that. And those are the things that really bug me is the media whipped up a mob. And Vlad didn't help. Because he should have just disappeared or brought somebody else up who actually had better skills at talking to the mob and settled the mob much quicker. We all hated Clinton, but he had a good way of dealing with the mob. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it was an unprecedented event for him.
It was a standard deviation of like a bazillion.
Right.
Which is the whole GameStop thing broke every model that hedge funds had. And once the model's broken, things can go crazy for a while.
Right. That's what I like Chamath a lot, but like that's what annoyed me about Chamath's comments is that he wasn't taking into consideration that like,
and he has conflicts.
Yeah, he has conflict of interest, but also he wasn't like taking into consideration that something like this had never happened before.
Well, it's the CNBC-ification of smart people. He is so smart, and he's been nothing but nice to me, and I have total respect. But then I'll go on CNBC for an hour, and all of a sudden, I don't think it's fair.
Right.
I'm like, I immediately lose trust in both CNBC and Chamath, because no one should get an hour talking about their own book on a business channel that I think sucks already. Where did they choose this? How? Like, that's not fair. And that's what creates these angry mobs. And that's not Chamath's fault. I think it's a bad decision long-term for Chamath. That bet of going on TV and yelling all day and yelling who's right and who's wrong is a bet by him to corral assets, which is the game.
One of the things that shocked me about that is like I've been vocal on Twitter that I'm anti like short selling in general, but like what was crazy about GameStop is that they had short sold 140% of the stock, and things like that seem like they should be easily fixable.
Easily. So Vlad finally came out and said T+0, and that's what crypto kind of does.
Yeah.
Meaning people were buying GameStop and then lending it.
Right.
So you don't know what the leverage is.
Right.
Okay. Right. This is why
Same
I say when this stuff is happening, you can watch it. You can put $10 if you know how to bet it and risk truly $10, not 10 that turns into 10,000.
Right.
Or just ignore. What's wrong with ignoring?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the ignoring
camp. When you see
camp.
a gunfight, you either run into it if you're a cop, because that's your job, or you fucking hightail out of there and hope there's no drones behind it. Yeah. And I hightail.
But I want the cops to go in there, right? Like I want them to find out what's going on.
Like it's so easy. There's a paper trail.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a paper trail.
There's a paper trail.
And the longer you let the paper trail cover itself up, they'll cover it up.
Yeah. And let's also make sure the short selling is not.
Short selling is an important part of the market. And I think I can live with any rules as long as they're clearly defined.
Yeah.
And here's what people need to understand. That was a horrible thing that happened to some people. I can't. It must feel terrible. The rug got pulled. What were they thinking, though?
Right.
They had days and days of gains.
I don't have a lot of sympathy.
I don't have a lot of sympathy because they were already treading in untreaded water, and they had made their money.
Right.
So, yes, it could have gone to 1,000. It would have still ended up where it is today.
Right.
Period.
Somebody would have lost money as it was going up.
Yeah. So the rules got changed. Somebody made a call and asked for $3.5 billion. I honestly don't know. I do think Robinhood got stronger because while you were busy yelling, they patched a hole.
Right.
And they got smarter.
Yeah.
And I think in the moment I was very scared for my investment. Right? Because guess who's calling me?
Yeah.
My LPs.
Yeah.
Why didn't we sell? I'm like, wait a minute. When we sold some before, you said we were idiots. Like
they had a very temporary
decline
decline in valuation, but then they got 1 million users out of it, right?
Yeah.
Like I suspect they probably got a lot higher valuation
this goes
today.
To betting.
Yeah.
If you would bet me, I got on the phone when this happened and just started calling the people I trust. What could I have done right? Like, should I have sold? And some people have been through the fire before, like my friend Brian at Tinder said, this is sadly, Howard, all good. They're a network. It's only going to help them.
Right.
And he's always been right because he's lived inside a software growth beast.
Right.
And
where there's controversy.
Controversy
every day. Helps you long term.
And he's seen the numbers. The controversy really helps software companies.
Right.
It's always helped. It helped tobacco, it helped these things, but not at a scale that software had and not at the margins that software had.
Assuming you haven't actually fucked up in a big way.
Correct. As soon as you take care of your code, if you keep your code good
right,
and you treat your users good, software compounds like no one's ever seen. And that's why I'm bullish. That's where we get the pies growing.
Yeah.
It's not growing for everybody, and I call it tiny bubbles, tiny bear markets. We live in this era of tiny bubbles. We're in 4 of them right now.
Right.
Maybe 3D printing. Again, maybe crypto, right? Maybe Bitcoin, maybe other assets. But there's also tiny bear markets going on all over the place. And they're affecting people. Travel, services business. Right. You know what I mean? So I try and think of it not as everybody wants this one story. What's the market going to do? I'm like, come on. That's a bad question. I don't answer that question. because I have no idea. It's so many things go into it.
Yeah. You got your vaccine?
I got both, yes.
Did you get Pfizer or?
I got Pfizer's. We did the volunteer work here. Phoenix did a great job.
Okay.
It was fun. The family went out and did our couple days at the stadium, and at the end of your volunteer work, you get the shot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm
in
excited.
the end, Phoenix has done a good job.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we've done one of the better, like
Yeah.
Arizona in general.
I think we're helped with the weather, and people don't live on top of each other.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest. Like,
yeah, we have a lot of good things going for us, which
we
is
had a
why
lot
I
of
love
good things going
Arizona.
for us. Yeah. And it's why I moved here. I'm like, what, sun? Who doesn't want to be in the sun?
350 days
that's
out of
just
the year.
bad decision making if
Yeah.
you haven't figured it out yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Anything else you want to talk
I
about?
got nothing to pimp. Life is good. But I agree with you. Phoenix is, I've been up and down on Phoenix over the decades, but I'm very bullish.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come chat with me.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been so much fun.
Thank you.
I gotta have you again when we have a few investments from Fund 4 going out too.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. All right. You made it to the end of the episode. I would love to get your feedback, so take a moment to leave a genuine review in your favorite podcast app. That also helps us reach more people. Speaking of reach, if you like a particular episode, be sure to share it with someone who you think would enjoy it. See you next time.